These three cops outsmarted killers and got justice before it was too late.
Were you at home today? With your mom?
Justin Chalifoux dead.
Really? I'm sorry.
Yes, but the big boy did it.
The big boy did it? What big boy?
This is 3-year-old Jade Scotton. 5 hours before this footage was recorded, her mother Alita was found unconscious at home, having taken a lethal amount of insulin and methamphetamine. While it may look like an overdose, her 3-year-old daughter tells a different story.
What big boy?
I don't know what his name is.
Was there one boy?
Notice how the investigator is phrasing the question. He wants the answer to come strictly from the child, which makes what she says next even more disturbing.
Was there one boy?
3 boys.
3 boys?
They rolled over the floor. And my mom told them about.
Were them grown-ups or kids or what?
Growing up.
Grown-ups?
Yeah. To kill my mom.
Although Jade does her best to give a detailed account of what she witnessed, investigators can't tell if it's the truth or if it's her own imagination.
Well, Jade, how did your mommy get dead?
Somebody came in the house and rolled over the floor.
They rolled over the floor?
And killed my mom. Actually stepped in the wall and killed my mom.
5 months later, the plot to murder Jade's mother will be uncovered. A jealous ex-wife, Vicki Arlene Jensen, hired 3 teenagers to kill her ex-husband's new girlfriend, Jade Scotton's mother, Alita. The 3-year-old girl solved her mother's murder.
I want to meet her. The always will be in my heart.
Did your mom tell you something else?
No, I won't talk to her. Her dad.
But what happens when the child being interrogated refuses to talk? When a victim has been kidnapped and the only witness is an 8-year-old so traumatized, they won't speak to anyone. The interrogation you're about to hear was recorded on June 13th, 1985. Just days earlier, 7-year-old Melissa Ackerman was abducted in broad daylight. Her best friend Opal is the only one who escaped after she jumped out of the car's window.
Do you like to draw? Instead of just having to talk, we can talk and draw. How about a picture of your favorite weather?
The woman asking questions is Ann Burgess. She was called in by the FBI. They believe she's the only one who can make Opal talk.
She was somebody who had this set of knowledge that nobody else had and was the brains of the operation.
Dozens of police, firefighters, and volunteers were on the search today.
Melissa was riding her bicycle with a young girlfriend yesterday. A young, unkept man tried to abduct both of them.
It's not supposed to happen in a small town.
Just keep working, keep following up everything. It's discouraging, but we gotta keep going.
Johnson. The first one is Melissa Ackerman. She has brown hair and brown eyes. How old are you? 7.
On Sunday, June 2nd, 7-year-old Melissa, or Missy for short, spent the morning riding her bike with her friend Opal in Somonauk, Illinois. At 11:30 a.m., they were both seen in the area of County Line Road when they stopped at the home of their elementary school principal, James Wood, and asked him for the time. The girls then rode off going east. Minutes later, Principal Wood was driving to school when he noticed the girls' bikes abandoned in the middle of the road. The girls, however, were nowhere in sight. At 11:42 a.m., the police department received a call from the Hickey residence, more than a mile out from where the bikes were found. The boy on the phone was yelling frantically, while the operator could hear young Opal in the background, sobbing and out of breath. Her friend Melissa had been kidnapped.
It's a call that you never want to get. It seemed almost like slow motion and wishing and hoping that it was not real.
When I went to Somonauk to work on the case, there was a level of anxiety and fear that was pretty high. It was palpable.
Missy's friend Opal was with her, and he tried to kidnap both of them, but she was able to get away from him.
Anything that she said was really important and could give us more information into the offender we were looking for. It's not easy getting someone to talk to you. And Opal wasn't talking.
In order to find Melissa, investigators are looking for more witnesses, anyone who might have seen the abduction. At the very least, they need a physical description of the suspect or any information about the vehicle he was driving. Without those two things, they have no hope of finding Missy alive.
The first 24, 48 hours are crucial. After that much time, the likelihood of getting that child back from a known abduction diminishes every hour.
June 12th, 1985. Missy has been missing for 10 days, and still, investigators are no closer to finding her. Their only hope is to make 8-year-old Opal talk. The FBI flies in Dr. Ann Burgess, a teacher of nursing at Boston College. She has been working for the agency for over 7 years, studying serial killers and dangerous predators. But it's her experience with victims that make her a key asset.
You never can forget Opal. She was just adorable, but just so small and lost. It was a tiny table, child's table, that we sat at so that she was comfortable. And I introduced myself. I said, I'm Dr. Ann. And then I said,
do you like to draw? Instead of just having to talk, we can talk and draw.
I said, I have a specific types of questions I want to ask you. And the first was, can you draw a picture of your favorite weather?
How about a picture of your favorite weather? Rainy days?
She drew Melissa in raindrops. And so then I said, is that your favorite weather? And she said, no, I like sun. Her mind is just on Missy.
She started out slow and non-threatening, took time to gain her trust.
I could have just gone in and said, what do you remember? What can you tell me? But we had a traumatized child here. The task was to be able to not traumatize her further because you were going to ask her to go back through a very distressing time.
While Dr. Burgess is slowly making progress with Opal, she's under pressure from the FBI. She needs to deliver any information that will lead to a suspect. The life of 7-year-old Melissa Ackerman is on the line, and every second counts. But there's a reason why Ann Burgess is able to connect with Opal when no one else could. It's 1956, nearly 30 years earlier. In Boston, Massachusetts, 19-year-old Ann Burgess is studying to become a nurse. One night, as she's planning to attend a sorority meeting, Ann hitches a ride by the side of the main street.
The college was up this big hill. My sorority met up there, but then coming back down, it was dark by this time. And then they said, oh, just stand over there by that road, and lots of people go down, you can just hitch a ride.
As one car pulls over, Ann gets in the front seat, next to a man she's never met before. But in the 50s, it's not unusual for people to accept rides from strangers. The dangers of hitchhiking are not yet common knowledge. So Ann doesn't think twice and puts her seatbelt on, and the man drives off. About halfway down the road, Ann notices the car is slowing down before it starts to pull over. Then the man turns to face Ann with a disturbing smirk on his face. She quickly understands what his intentions are, and she's terrified.
I knew I was in trouble, so I just screamed at him. I said, I have to get down. They'll be looking for me if I don't go back. I was really, really scared. I hit the horn.
As cars passing by begin to slow down at the sound of the horn, the man is distracted, worried someone might have seen. Ann doesn't hesitate. She unbuckles her seatbelt, opens a door, and runs off.
I said, I'll get out. I'll walk the rest of the way. Luckily, he took off. But I saw how easy it was to get into a situation. That's what gave me some real sensitivity to the plight of the victim.
That night, Ann took a decision that would change the rest of her life. She was going to do everything she could to help victims of rape.
I thought, we've got to get people aware of this problem. I began to talk to the patients with traumatic experiences.
The year is 1978, 7 years before meeting with Opal. Ann gets a call she could never expect.
I was just in my office right here. And I can remember I had a research assistant at the time, Anna Laszlo, and she just stood in the doorway. And she said, I think you better take this call. And I said, no, just get a message. I'll call him back. She said, no, you better call. It's the FBI.
Something with my taxes or something. Why are they calling me? What did I do? And he says he'd like to invite me down to talk about the book that I wrote. When the FBI called, rape cases weren't being looked at. They were just being put on the shelf.
Because of her experience, having spoken to many victims, she's asked to come teach the men at the FBI everything she has learned about sexual assault and trauma. For Anne, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity.
I also had to think about my family, because it might take up extra time, nighttime, weekend time. That was hard, because I had the young children. I hesitated.
When you're looking for who can you influence to change a broken system, the FBI was the top of the list. So I felt I could make a difference.
I decided this was important.
In 1978, Anne Burgess flies down to Quantico, Virginia, to the FBI's headquarters. But while she's been invited, Anne is not welcomed quite as she expected.
I'm Anne Burgess, and I'd just like to, again, personally welcome all of you. You all have been selected for your expertise in a wide area.
She looked out at this audience of 40 FBI agents who were all men, and she started talking about rape, and there were some snickers in the audience.
All of my research is in the area of victims and the impact of victimization.
They thought rape was just sex. Women secretly wanted it, or they were out there and asked for it. They would blame the victim. Why weren't you taking care of your kids? What are you doing out at night?
Did you like it? I mean, you would not believe some of the questions that would be asked by interviewers back then, because they believed that something that the victim said, did, or wore was the reason that they were inciting all of these feelings in the men. We started changing the questions rather than what were you doing, what was he doing? What we now call a trauma-focused interview is that you ask it in terms of understanding the reaction that the victim had so you can better deal with it.
1985. Anne Burgess has spent the last 7 years changing how FBI agents do their interrogations. Her work will be crucial to unlocking victims, like Opal, who can help the investigations.
What was it like for you that night? Did you go to sleep?
I stayed up for long, past 3 days.
Okay, what would go through your mind?
I thought about Melissa. The really part that scares me, I think he's right behind me, watching me.
But you say to yourself, he's not there. I just thought that. It isn't. That's good that you know that. Okay.
She was so scared she wouldn't go in front of a window because he might be out there. She wouldn't go near a window. She wouldn't eat. I said, why aren't you eating? She says, I'm waiting. Missy and I were going to go for lunch. So here it is a week later.
Opal is distraught, but she seems willing to open up to Anne Burgess.
She was so sad and so forlorn. So it made her feel that she was giving me something that might help Missy.
The detail Opal is about to share will help create a profile of the abductor, but Anne Burgess has to ask the right questions because one mistake could lead investigators on the wrong path. Time is running out. Every minute, the chances of finding Missy alive decreases. But how will Dr. Burgess be able to make sense of what a traumatized 8-year-old remembers? In 1978, Anne began consulting for the FBI. The only department who is interested in having Anne on board is the Behavioral Science Unit, located in the sub-basement of the Quantico FBI headquarters.
I remember the first time going, and you get on that elevator that doesn't have any numbers, and then you go down 2 floors, and there are no windows. It's a bomb shelter, literally.
Agents were all working on these sort of not-by-the-book projects, some of which were approved, some of which were not so approved. It kind of didn't matter because they were in the basement where no one was really paying them attention anyway.
The first project Anne is brought into is one most FBI agents consider useless, outrageous, and a huge waste of resources. Interviewing serial killers with the intention of understanding them better.
The reason they wanted to study serial killers is they were having these cases and they didn't know the motive.
If we don't start looking at serial killers and learning something about them, 10, 15, 20 years from now, we're going to be right back where we are today.
The mind of the serial predator was not something that was at all understood. Why would somebody choose to kill strangers over and over and over again? What makes him so different from the rest of us?
Thoughts drive behavior. A lot of people do it the other way around, behavior and then the thoughts. No, thoughts is what made people behave. So you've got to get into their head. This is where the Mind Hunter monograph came.
I knew a week before she died I was going to kill her.
I knew a week before she died I was going to kill her.
We didn't have the approval of the FBI, but it was something that we had to do in secret.
Because Anne is only a consultant, she's kept out of the interview process. For now, all they ask her to do is listen to the recordings of interviews with known serial killers. Hours and hours of conversations with the most wicked men on the planet.
I can see how certain feelings and ideas developed in me to the point where I began to act out on them. Certain very violent and very destructive feelings.
Something snapped in me. I picked up a rock, and big size, softball size, and I hit her with the rock upside of her head. It knocked her unconscious. Once you kill another human being, you'll never be the same person again.
The tapes that they brought back, the cases were so horrific. What I heard was like eavesdropping on the rawest fringes of humanity.
I later on put her in the car and I raped her.
I said, you do exactly what I say.
So if you're going to kill somebody,
I walked
you
into
just
the
put it on their
bedroom
neck.
and she was...
I cut off her head.
I had a utility knife and I cut her throat.
I think I stabbed her 4 or 5 more times.
Be walking up the stairs with a camera bag that had her severed head.
The tapes that I listened to were fascinating. Now, the problem was we had to make sense out of it. These were agents that never had done research. They needed help with a methodology.
Anne was the brains of the operation. She saw the potential for using interviews with serial killers to be predictive of who a killer might be. She thought, if you can recognize the patterns, you can do something to stop that pattern from continuing.
So we had to come up with this questionnaire. What are our research questions? How did you get him to say this? How was he able to tell you that? Maybe we'd learn a good question.
What should the order of the questions be?
How far back do you have to go? Well, that's where we were starting to learn things. I would listen, I would hear something,
Why did your father
I would jot down to see what was coming up over and over.
So if we see this in another guy, all right, that's really interesting. If we see it in a third, okay, this is a pattern.
What are the patterns?
Categories.
Data sets.
So the data began piling up.
Now we have something we can work with.
June 13th, 1985. Anne Burgess is making significant progress with young Opal, but she's about to ask her questions that will bring her back to that horrific event. And there's a chance that Opal is too upset and will simply shut down.
So then I said, okay, now I want you to draw what happened that day.
No, that Sunday, was it raining?
No, what was it like on that day?
It was hot.
Hot?
Sunny.
And sunny.
She started drawing and she drew the road first. She drew a line down it indicating it's a two-way road. And she drew the car. And she drew the man. And she drew herself and Melissa. They had their bikes and she had them in different colors. I said, and what happened? Now, because she had drawn it, we could use that.
Coming this way, the car is going this way.
The car's going that way.
And you're coming that way.
Then he asked us to stop our bikes. Then we stopped our bikes. Then he asked us how to get uptown. And so I told him how to go uptown, and he said he couldn't hear us. So then he got out of the car.
So he came over, and it was at that point that he grabbed her. She said he grabbed me and he threw me in the car, through the window.
And he snuck up behind me and I went that way. Then he grabbed me and threw me in his car head first. I knew he was going to kidnap us. He tried to do something to us.
And so then he went back to get Melissa. And she said, I had to get out. And I tried to get the door handle, but there was no door handle.
Already, Dr. Burgess can tell this was premeditated. The car had been modified with the intention of kidnapping someone, but she's going to need more than that if she wants to create a profile for the offender. Ann Burgess knows this more than anyone. It's 1979. Ann has been working for the Behavioral Science Unit for just over a year when she first hears about a man they call the ski mask rapist. He's been spreading terror across the state of Louisiana.
The state's top law enforcement officer, Colonel Bo Garrison of the Louisiana State Police, called a press conference tonight in the ski mask rape case. The case involving burglary and crime against nature fits the pattern of some 20 rape cases throughout South Louisiana.
A state police spokesman says most of the break-ins involve sexual assault.
The rapist would sneak into a house through an open window or door to surprise his victim. Then in many cases, he would wait until the woman's husband or boyfriend returned. After tying up the husband, the attack would start. Governor Dave Treen instructed State Police Commander Bo Garrison to make capture of the ski mask rapist top priority.
Well, local police departments had never seen a case like this.
The community was so scared that they reached out to the BSU and said, we really need help. He would target someone, he'd find out where they lived, surveil the place, and get as much out of planning it. He cut the wires into the house for telephone, and he prided himself in getting them all together and raping the victim in front of the husband and the kids.
Police are advising women to be very, very careful.
I really don't feel safe. I'm just afraid, that's all. Really afraid.
Some residents have decided that locking doors and windows isn't enough.
South Louisiana saw an increase of gun sales by well over 1,000%.
I'm very, very scared. I have all the windows locked and the dogs loose at night. I think I'm gonna put some bars in my window.
Summer 1981, the ski mask rapist is increasing his pace, but the Behavioral Science Unit is no closer to solving the case. They have no physical description of the suspect and no detail on the vehicle he drives.
He really kept them looking for 2 years, and he was escalating. The ski mask rapist was doing such sadistic things to the victim's body that my feeling was that we better catch him fast or we're going to physically lose a victim.
While she's only a consultant for the FBI, Ann is sent down to Louisiana to interview victims of the ski mask rapist. They believe if she brings her understanding of psychology to the interview process, she could gain more information on the offender.
I felt very anxious to go out because to be an actual part of an ongoing investigation was unusual for me. The pressure I was feeling was really a question of would I be able to contribute to the case. How do you get someone to trust you in an hour? And I could have just gone in and said, what do you remember? What can you tell me? But I chose to take it from a more human standpoint.
I told her that they were asking because they wanted to get the offender. She's helping in this process.
And once she knew that, she realized they really believed her, and she would give out the information.
Sorry, thank you for that. I don't like that feeling. I just start thinking about something else.
You try to find out what is going to be the lasting memory that the victim has. That's going to be the hardest thing for her to get rid of, to help neutralize that. The thought that just keeps going around and around in the head. It's like a song that you can't get out of your head.
Do you ever kind of think like, oh, I mean, I can't walk it from the gun. Tell me about that. You were kind of brave for a while ago. Get my eyes closed, don't do. Good. When I sit up, I can sleep. And it's that.
Finally, Ann is able to unlock the victim's memory, which will lead to this composite sketch.
25 rapes attributed to the ski mask rapist.
Rape cases in 5 Louisiana cities.
The escalation of the occurrences was rapidly progressing. We were fearful that one of these days we were going to have a deceased victim.
When I came back to Quantico, I gave the information on the victims to the agent. I realized that how he selected victims, it was a similar pattern. He would go after wealthy women. His domineering behavior showed that he saw himself as an alpha male. His evasiveness and the frequency with which he moved showed that he was educated and served in the military. We know that he liked nice things, and he's profiting off what he could steal.
He was profiled as having a fancy car, but not that expensive. One of the questions they always ask in any victim is, did you see anything unusual in your neighborhood? And several had said they had seen this car, a red Trans Am. Finally, they were able to get the profile out.
Authorities have been working with a psychological profile of the rapist. The profile called an individual a good looker who picks up women easily but is likely to beat them up and is incapable of long-lasting relationships.
A police officer out of Lake Charles, Louisiana, had seen the car that matched the profile of the ski mask rapist. He came out of the house about 5:30 and drove to a convenience store just around the street. At 5:55, Simonis comes walking out of the store with a loaf of bread and 2 packs of cigarettes. We got him.
On November 27, 1981, after spending 2 years spreading terror across 12 states, John Barry Simonis is put under arrest. He confesses to at least 81 attacks. Although none of his victims were found dead, he is sentenced to 2,690 years in prison. This comes as a huge relief to the survivors and the community. But Anne's work is beginning to take its toll on her personal life.
It was a very careful separation of what was talked about during the day and what was the personal time with the family. You can get PTSD from some of this. There was one particular time I started to get letters and threats against me. Alan, my husband, said, maybe you should get a gun. We bought a handgun for me. And it's not just me, but you always worry about your family. It's a very difficult position to be in, but I decided I was just going to stand up and just keep on going.
June 13th, 1985. As she's sitting across from 8-year-old Opal, Anne is listening for any detail that could help find her friend.
And she said, I had to get out. And I tried to get the door handle, but there was no door handle. I said, so what did you do? She was so smart. She says, I went back out the way he threw me in. So she got out and she runs and hides. They were near a John Deere sales office. There was a big one out on the lawn. And she said she hid behind it and she drew it.
This is where you're hiding your Good.
The man then started the car. He had thrown Melissa in the back seat.
And someone was banging on the window. She's screaming my name out.
That's the memory that she has on it. You know that that has to be in her head all the time after that. She gets very disorganized, and you can see in the drawing, she just starts drawing little pieces.
Opal's last image of her friend Melissa being kidnapped is one no child should ever have to see. Anne knows the best way to help her would be to bring back Melissa alive. But for that, she needs Opal to keep talking.
I knew they wanted something on the car.
The car, okay. Describe it as you're drawing it.
And it was shaped like a pinnacle, but it wasn't a pinnacle.
How about the man? Can you draw a picture of the man?
How did he look to you?
He looked like he was in the mid-20s or something. He had things sticking out, like he hadn't shaved.
Right.
She gave a pretty good description. Don't underestimate what a child can tell you. Now, maybe you may have to interpret it a little bit, but they will get some parts that are just on target.
So you thought about what you'll say to her when you see her? What would you like to say? I might tell her what all I've been doing. And I had gone to the airline.
You gonna tell her that? Yeah, that was pretty neat, wasn't it?
LaSalle County deputy who was just out patrolling about 20 miles from Salmonat, an area that had been searched.
And he was able to see 2 little feet under a heavy rock.
You don't hear news like that without feeling it at an emotional level.
The key to the case was Opal being able to give information to law enforcement and then taking that information and spreading it throughout the county.
The FBI this evening is charging a 28-year-old Aurora man with the kidnap and murder of 8-year-old Melissa Ackerman.
Because of Opal's description of the suspect and the vehicle, a man named Brian Dugan is arrested. During his interrogation, Dugan confessed. Authorities also found out how he had victimized at least a dozen girls and women between 1974 and 1985, raping 7 and killing 3 of them.
Brian Dugan, who admitted killing Janine Nicaragua back in 1983, DNA evidence suggested Dugan was indeed the murderer.
Donna Schnorr was the oldest victim at 27. Melissa Ackerman became the youngest at just 7 years old.
Ann and I did not discuss the emotional toll that working a case like that has on investigators that have children. We didn't discuss the pain, and we didn't discuss the fear.
It isn't really possible to take all of these things and completely and totally dissociate them. Every once in a while, we pause and realize what it is we're really looking at. Someone's child was living an innocent life, and then the family has to look at an empty seat at the table forever.
I remember when I was a little boy, I was in the backyard, and my mom came home. I look over, and we make eye contact. And I start thinking to myself, I'm like, oh my gosh, I must have did something wrong. And before I could get through the whole list of things, she's upon me, and she kisses me on the forehead. And I'm like, Mom, what was that for? And she's like, oh, I talked to a man today. He's a very bad man. And I had to ask him, why did you do the bad things that you did? He said to her that the reason he was so bad was because his mom never kissed him on the forehead. For my mom, one outlet for her is her work. She's very devoted to try to figure out how to prevent this from happening in the future. Her work helps her deal with some of the tragedy that she's experienced.
You don't forget these cases, but you learn from it. And you only hope that it in some way helps and you've learned something that can help in the next case.
After spreading terror for years, Brian Dugan is finally behind bars. He is sentenced to life without parole. Although she will never see Melissa again, Opal has brought justice to her friend. Because of her courage, Brian Dugan will never make another victim. Over the years, the shock of her ordeal subsided, but her everyday anxiety persists. However, in 2009, during the trial for Janine Nicaragua's murder, she faced Brian Dugan for the first time since the kidnapping. She forced herself to watch him plead guilty to the crime, to finally put her fears to rest. Today, Opal has a beautiful family and lives her life to the fullest. As for Ann Burgess, it is because of her meeting with Opal that she finally realized how much of an impact her work could make.
When they found Melissa's body, somebody had to tell Opal. After they told her about Missy, Opal said, I want to draw.
This was the Dubberly family. Before 1988, they lived a happy life in Alturas, Florida. They went to church every Sunday and never caused any trouble. On June 14th, 16-year-old Dwayne Dubberly found a disturbing letter in the mailbox, threatening the family to move out of Florida, or they would all die. When Dwayne showed the letter to his parents, his mother Peggy started to worry, while her husband Pi dismissed it as a prank. October 23rd, 4 months later, Dwayne's mother, Peggy, fell suddenly ill, complaining of nausea and extreme pain, losing large amounts of hair. As her condition got worse, Peggy's husband Pi refused to take her to the hospital. 1 week later, Peggy fell into a coma. Her son Dwayne started having the same symptoms. December 2nd, police identified the cause of the sickness as thallium, a deadly chemical used in rat poison. When authorities tested the remaining members of the family, all of them showed high amounts of thallium, even Pi, Peggy's husband. The mystery that threatens the life of Dwayne and his family would remain unsolved, unless, by some miracle, one undercover agent could catch the killer before he makes another victim.
To murder somebody by poisoning is exceptionally rare.
This takes a great deal of intelligence. This is not a brute force weapon.
He was a very evil, very devious person.
Susan could have very well been his next murder victim.
They want to sit from afar and watch someone suffer.
I hope I'm out of time, suspect.
He's not the kind of person to get mad. He's the kind that would get even.
That could be messy.
Yeah, I would imagine.
The year is 1988. 16-year-old Dwayne Dubberly lives a happy life with his loving family. His mother, Peggy, works as a waitress at the local diner. After years of raising 3 children on her own, she marries Pi Carr, who has 2 children himself.
They seem to be happy. My mom loved him more than anything.
We seen all the heartbreak that she had gotten in her life. I was hoping that Pi was going to be the one.
The nuclear family moves in together in the quiet town of Alturas, Florida, a perfect place to raise a family where nothing bad ever happens and no one locks their door. October 23rd, in the early hours of the morning, Peggy leaves for work. Shortly after arriving at the diner, Peggy begins to feel ill, complaining of burning in her legs and feet and an intense chest pain. When Peggy is taken to the hospital, she is almost incapacitated. Doctors put her under observation and collect blood samples for tests. But as every test comes back negative, her physician is unable to make a diagnosis. Peggy is sent home with nothing more than a prescription for the pain.
She was laying in bed and she couldn't move. She said she couldn't open her eyes. She was nauseated. She was sick. She was very sick.
October 30th, 1 week after her first symptoms, Peggy, her son Dwayne, and her stepson Travis are all rushed to Winter Haven Hospital. All of them have the same symptoms.
Throwing up, super dehydrated. The pain that I had was unbearable. It was like 1,000 needles just wrapped around your foot. I was just crying. Me and Travis were both just crying. I honestly thought I was gonna die.
As Peggy is put in the intensive care unit, infectious disease specialist Robert Van Hook notices something alarming.
At one point, she was noticed to have her hair coming out. It was not just a few hairs, she was losing excessive amounts of hair.
Dr. Van Hook fears the worst. This might be a result of poison, one that wouldn't show up on regular lab tests, but he's only read about this type of poison in medical books. He then decides to run one more test for thallium poisoning. Thallium was widely used in rat poison until 1972, when it was banned in the United States. If ingested, it can cause delirium, paralysis, even death. The worst part is, there is no known cure to thallium poisoning. When the test comes back, it shows that Peggy has, in her system, 50 times the maximum amount a human can survive. October 31st, Peggy falls into a coma. Her stepson Travis is put on a respirator, and her son Dwayne is not showing any signs of improvement.
I remember waking up in the hospital, hysterical, what's going on? Where's mom at? Is she okay?
Despite the pain, Dwayne asks to be wheeled up 4 floors to see his mom, but nothing can prepare him for what he's about to see.
Her hair was gone. She weighed probably 90 pounds. They had a cap on her. They didn't want to give me the shock of my life to see her laying there. I remember me thinking and hoping, everybody tells you, she can hear you, talk to her, she can hear you.
Right away, police do everything they can to find the source of the poisoning. Detective Ernie Mincy of the Polk County Sheriff's Office is assigned to the case.
Our sole purpose was to identify that poison and have it removed from the environment to prevent further injury to any of the persons.
They investigate the orange grove surrounding the area, the neighborhood water supply, even the restaurant where Peggy works, but no trace of thallium is found. It isn't long before the public is made aware of the situation and panic begins to spread.
The community was clamoring for answers so that they would know whether or not they were safe.
I mean, we truly didn't know in the very beginning how this all came about. How did these people ingest? How did they touch? How did they inhale?
Some of your first thoughts are the worst thoughts. How many more people will show up at the hospital with this heavy metal poisoning?
Investigators scour the car home, collecting dust samples, and gather more than 400 household items for laboratory analysis. One of them comes back positive, a 6-pack of Coke bottles, where 3 remained unopened. Inside, test results show each contained more than a gram of thallium, enough to kill an adult. Detective Mincy knows there are only 2 possible scenarios. The first one being product tampering at the Coke factory. If that's the case, how many more people have drunk the poison?
Where else could this be throughout not only the county, but the state or the nation?
They had people down here who were scared to death to drink Coke. The initial step was to look at the bottling company and see what could have happened there.
But with Coca-Cola's collaboration, a large-scale tampering is quickly ruled out.
It was actually physically impossible to tamper with the product at the plant.
Which leaves Detective Mincy only one scenario. This is a targeted attack on Peggy Carr and her family. As the investigation focuses on finding a suspect, they first take a look at the family members.
Her husband was a suspect when Peggy was very sick, and Pi didn't appear to be. Obviously, you think of him.
We dug very deeply at that point into Pi Carr's background, anything that would show motivation to poison his wife.
Although Peggy and Carr got married only 7 months earlier, it seems their honeymoon was short-lived. Pi had been working long hours at the mine, and Peggy had grown suspicious. One night, she found him with another woman. Detective Mincy also learns that the weekend Peggy first became ill, Pi was conveniently out of town. When he came back, he resisted taking his wife to the hospital.
I specifically remember my sister saying, "No, I'm taking her to the hospital." And he's like, no, just, it's a flu, it'll pass. I physically picked her up out of bed because she couldn't walk and carried her to my sister's car.
Everything seems to point to Pi Carr. Even Dwayne thinks he might be guilty.
I think he treated my mother horrible. I thought that he poisoned my mother because he wanted out of the marriage. I mean, my mom was in the hospital. I don't remember him ever shedding a tear, ever, not one time.
But something doesn't sit well with Detective Mincy. Why would Pi Carr poison his own son, Travis? When they interrogate him, Pi reveals a clue that would confuse the police even further. June 14th, 4 months before Peggy is poisoned, Dwayne finds a letter in the mailbox. Inside is a yellow post-it with a threatening note typewritten on it.
It said, "You and all your so-called family have exactly 2 weeks to move out of the state of Florida or you will all die." And then at the bottom it said, "This is no joke." We were kids and we just laughed it off. Pi laughed it off. Nothing happened. We didn't call the cops.
The letter is addressed to Pi Carr, with his name misspelled. Could Pi Carr have sent the letter to himself? Then, Detective Mincy learns of another incident a few years prior.
2 of the Carr dogs died suddenly within a couple weeks of each other.
Both dogs had become very ill. Their fur had fallen out.
We suspect they experimented on the dog first.
As Peggy's state continues to deteriorate, and Dwayne and Travis show no sign of improvement, the rest of the family are tested for thallium. The results are far worse than anyone expected.
Everyone in the house had thallium in their system,
including Pi Carr, which means he's no longer a suspect.
I wouldn't hold thallium powder in my hand. Anybody that had enough knowledge to do this crime wouldn't ingest thallium and take that risk. They just wouldn't do it.
2-year-old Casey, Peggy's granddaughter, also has traces of thallium. March 3rd, 1989, Peggy has been suffering for 5 months when Dwayne is asked to come to her bedside for the last time. The family now needs to make the difficult decision to take her off life support.
She's not coming back. She's brain dead. They said that you're going to see her lungs inflate and deflate quite a few times, and then that's it.
That was it. It was terrible. I just lost the most important thing in my life. She was gone.
Peggy Carr dies at the Bartow Memorial Hospital. She was only 41. The nuclear family is shattered. As Dwayne is recovering slowly from the poisoning, he and his siblings are sent to live with relatives. Pi and his kids also move out. The house in Alturas is abandoned. For Detective Mincy, her tragic death changes everything. This is now a murder investigation.
To murder somebody by poisoning is exceptionally rare. It is something that has to be thought up in a very demented mind by a very brilliant person who thinks that they're smarter than everyone else.
When the FBI examines the contaminated Coke bottles, they find tiny scratch marks. This indicates the bottles were meticulously opened, the thallium added in, and the caps were replaced and sealed shut. Thallium is tasteless, odorless, and easily dissolved. It also causes soda to overflow, changes its color, and leaves a sediment at the bottom. But the mixture found in the soda avoided these problems. Whoever laced the Coke bottles with thallium has a sophisticated knowledge of chemistry. This was the work of a highly intelligent individual, one that would be very hard to catch. Police begin questioning neighbors of the Carr house and around town.
Alturas is a very small community, a few hundred people. I think interviewed every single person that lived in Alturas.
The closest residence in the vicinity is that of George Trepal and his wife Diana. When Detective Mincy interrogates him, Trepal's reaction to the subject of the Carrs is shockingly harsh.
He went into a tirade about the problems with these red-necked children and family that lived next to him.
Then, Mincy asks him why he thinks anyone would want to poison the Carr family.
The same question I'd asked to many other people. And the normal standard response was, I don't know. I have no idea. His response was, someone wanted them to leave.
The same message that was written in the threatening letter.
He said exactly what was in a note. Nobody else knew of its existence except for law enforcement.
He made himself a suspect.
Police find out that George Trepal is a self-taught chemist. His wife Diana has a master's degree in chemistry. Both are highly intelligent people and members of Mensa, an elite society for people with IQs in the top 2% of the population. When they dig further into his background, investigators find out that George has served time in prison.
He had been the chemist in a major methamphetamine laboratory in the southeast.
One of the ingredients often used in the production of amphetamine, thallium. George Trepal is now a person of interest, which comes as a surprise, even to Peggy's son, Dwayne.
I said, they've got the wrong guy. That guy couldn't hurt a flea. There's no way this guy could do that.
Detective Mincy also finds out that Trepal had an argument with the Carrs over some loud music.
George Trepal was standing behind our vehicles hollering, telling us to turn the music down. So we turned the music down, and he's like, is your mother here? We're like, no, we're sorry, we'll keep it down. And he took off.
But who would ever suspect a poisoning over some kids playing a television or a radio too loud?
Less than 48 hours after the argument, Peggy was poisoned. Investigators are convinced they have the right man, but without any proof, they can't arrest him. In most cases, one possible option is to bring the suspect in for questioning and hope to get a confession. But detectives think that wouldn't work on Trepal.
He was introverted, he was very quiet, he was not confrontational.
Grabbing a guy like that and bringing him in will only make him shut down.
The FBI suggests there's only one alternative. Someone must go undercover and outsmart the certified genius at his own game. Detective Ernest Mincy assigns Special Agent Susan Gorick to the case. She's asked to infiltrate the Mensa group to which George Trepal belongs.
We suspected it would only be for that weekend that I would have to do the undercover role.
And I was told to be careful because the person had a photographic memory, so if he saw us, that he could remember our cars or our faces.
Under an assumed name, Susan is planning to attend a Mensa murder mystery weekend that George and his wife Diana are hosting. Susan Gorick becomes Sherry Gwynn, a woman on the verge of divorce from an abusive husband. April 14th, 1989, Susan Gorick heads to the local hotel where the event is being hosted. When she arrives, she's greeted by George Trepal himself. Detective Gorick is now face to face with the suspected killer.
The biggest fear that I had was that he had seen me when I was doing surveillance. I really took a deep breath and I looked for any recognition in his eyes.
Trepal doesn't seem to recognize Susan, but she can't be sure. After all, he's not a confrontational person who would just come out and say it. Susan has to play along.
He's not going to get in your face. He's going to poison you so that you die a slow, painful death. We put her in a very dangerous position.
I told him who I was, Sherry Gwynn, and that I needed to register.
And he handed me a packet with the weekend's information.
The pamphlet was made by George himself. It includes several well-planned-out murder scenarios members will have to solve during the weekend. One of them is a poisoning.
One of the paragraphs that he wrote in this report said, "When a death threat appears on the doorstep, prudent people throw out all their food and watch what they eat. Most items on the doorstep are just a neighbor's way of saying, 'I don't like you, move or else.'"
The message is eerily similar to the one the Cars family received before Peggy was poisoned. Right away, Susan knows she has the right suspect.
After I read that, I knew that it was just not coincidence.
As she tries to engage Trepal in conversation, Susan watches every word she says. One slip, and it could cost her her life.
When he asked me about my background, I told him that my husband was a lawyer from Houston, Texas, and that I had left him. Talked about how he knew someone was lying by the way that their neck muscles moved. It made me very nervous.
Before the weekend is over, Sherry confides in George that she intends to move to Florida to get away from her husband. That's when Detective Gorick gets her first break.
We have 2 winners because one winner is Nast.
George said that they were thinking about moving his wife's practice and that they would be selling their house. After I talked to my supervisors, they immediately wanted me to follow up. They said, "It'll just be a week."
The undercover operation, which was supposed to last only for a weekend, is extended. Susan will continue to put her life at risk and carry on the role of Sherry. But she knows this could be the perfect opportunity to find evidence that could help her team get a search warrant for the house.
Maybe he'd open a closet and I'd see lab equipment or maybe some chemicals or something.
The following week, I went over to the house.
While touring the house, Trepal tells Sherry that Alturas is so safe, no one locks their door. What Susan discovers around the house raises suspicions, but nothing is enough to get a search warrant.
He did show me a small secret passageway that he had built into the library. Upstairs, he did have a mannequin that had some bondage type things.
The plan has failed. After leaving the house, Susan must maintain her Sherry Gwynn persona in order to collect as much evidence as she can against George Trepal, all while knowing that he's a highly intelligent killer.
I had to be very careful. I had 2 children at home and a husband that could be my life and my family's life.
If he found out that she was an undercover detective with the sheriff's office, then she would end up poisoned as well.
Over the passing months, Susan meets Trepal over a series of lunch dates. A surveillance team watches from afar, capturing his every move.
Every time I left the table and came back, I would never eat or drink anything else. It took me a long time for him to confide in me enough for me to understand just how much he hated people that had less intelligence than him.
After 8 months, Susan has collected a large amount of small evidence, but not enough to build a case against George Trepal. Her supervisors are beginning to question the value of her operation. They could shut her down at any moment. But to Susan, this means more than just a failed assignment. She can't help but think of her own family. It could have been her husband, Gary, or her 12-year-old son, Greg, or even her 2-year-old son, Stephen, who drank the poison. Peggy and her family deserve justice. Susan has to bring in results, and soon. December 1989, Detective Gorick gets the call she's been waiting for. George and his wife Diana have moved out of town and are allowing Sherry Gwynn to move into their home. Without a warrant, Susan now has legal permission to invite the Polk County Crime Scene Unit inside the house. But because they believe Tripal would be too smart to leave thallium around the house, they look for traces of residue instead.
I truly believe that if we were going to find thallium, that it would probably be either in the air conditioning filter or possibly down one of the drains.
George Tripal and his wife left the house filled with their stuff, which allows the unit to collect samples. In the garage, they collect vials and chemistry bottles to be sent for analysis. Susan hopes one of them will come back positive for thallium, but while they're waiting for the results from the FBI lab, Susan needs to continue her role of deception.
I was starting to run out of ideas and run out of scenarios to put him through.
Time is running out. January 1990. With no news from the lab, Susan can no longer wait for the results. She has to take action and decides to try and trick Tripal into incriminating himself. What Susan doesn't know is Tripal is also preparing a trap for her.
I had George meet me at a little picnic area behind a McDonald's in Sebring.
The meeting between Detective Gorick and George Tripal is recorded on tape.
How are you?
Fine.
Good.
How's your world going?
Well, not real good, and that's what I need to talk to you about.
Okay.
I think he neglected to tell me something.
Oh, what then?
Something had happened in the neighborhood.
I told him that I had had 2 detectives come and talk to me when I moved into his house.
Oh yeah, somebody got voices next door.
That might not be a lot to you, but it's a lot to me.
Oh well, sorry.
They said they never caught the person that did it, and it really frightened me. You don't seem overly concerned that that's not why you moved out, is it? You weren't afraid, were you?
Apparently some sort of personal vendetta. It's not like they're running around poisoning everybody.
No one knew that. The crime had not been solved. At that point, there was really no doubt left in my mind that he was the one that had done it.
Susan hands him a business card she says detectives left behind. She tells him they came looking for him. Right away, Tripal's behavior begins to change.
And he started getting extremely nervous.
How fast can you want me? You seem to be really interested in me. I really don't know what's going on. Something isn't following me, please, here. I think I'm out of time suspect. That could be Nash.
Yeah, I would imagine.
Then, George asks her repeatedly to come over to his new house.
So you want a great tour of the house? I'll be happy to give this guy into it.
And I'll take a rain check on it.
Susan declines. But what would have happened if she had agreed to go to his house? After meeting, Tripal walks away, visibly shaken by the news.
Time is 11:30, and he's leaving. Very worried.
April 4th, 1990. Susan gets a call she didn't expect.
And I said, "You're kidding." And he said, "No, they're on the phone, and they found thallium."
The FBI confirms that one of the vials found in Tripal's garage contained thallium-1 nitrate, the exact compound used in the murder of Peggy Carr and the attempted murder of her entire family.
We had a lot of circumstantial evidence, but this was the only piece of real evidence.
I was just elated.
April 5th, George Tripal is arrested at his new home of Sebring.
I seen it on TV, them walking George Tripal in his orange outfit into the Polk County Jail. The same guy that I trusted and mowed his driveway.
He remains unfazed, even when his friend, Sherry Gwynn, presents her true identity to him.
I said, "George, my name is Special Agent Susan Gorick. I work with the Polk County Sheriff's Office, and I'm here to serve this on you and to get handwriting samples." And he looked at me and said, "Oh, okay," and just smiled at me.
But Susan has no idea yet just how close she came to becoming his next murder victim. When police search Tripal's home in Sebring, they make a shocking discovery. As they look for a hidden room, like the one in George Tripal's previous house, they find a door behind a pegboard.
He opened the door and there's no inside door handle.
The only window in the soundproof space has been sealed. Inside the room is a platform bed with wood stirrups.
He was building a bed on which to torture. He even had a pulley system to lift people.
And I was so glad that I had not gone. They might have not found me.
She just saw herself as being the person George had built that for.
January 1991. As George Trapal's trial begins, the jury is presented with overwhelming evidence against him. They show the items collected at Trapal's house, a journal titled General Poisoning Guides, in which the use of thallium is described as the poison of choice by criminals. In this journal, there is even a reference handwritten by Trapal about getting rid of the neighbors. A total of 55 fingerprints are found in that journal, all belonging to George Trapal. The prosecutor also shows the tools used in the decapsulating of the Coke bottles.
He had a set of very tiny screwdrivers, like jeweler's screwdrivers.
When they compare the tools to the marks on the bottle caps, the jury is shocked.
Those tool marks fit perfectly with one screwdriver that was missing in the jeweler's screwdriver set.
During the entire trial, Trapal remains calm, emotionless, sometimes even smiling.
George Trapal is truly evil. He knew what he was going to do. The little girl had thallium in her, and he didn't care.
The reasonings behind what he done over loud music, he took somebody's life.
He did the most horrible act that I've ever seen as a homicide investigator. He killed one person, put her through torture before her death. He justified it with his superior intelligence and the fact that people with lesser intelligence did not deserve to live.
The trial lasts for 2 whole months, but it only takes the jury 4 hours to reach a verdict. March 6, 1991, 2 years almost to the day after Peggy's death, George Trapal is found guilty on all counts. He is sentenced to death.
The defendant, George James Trapal, shall be electrocuted until he is dead.
It's been a long, hard struggle. Peggy was in hell. You'd have to have seen her to know what she went through.
And I'm glad it's over with.
The genius who thought he could commit the perfect crime has been defeated.
He might have had a higher IQ than most of the world, but he certainly wasn't smarter than Susan.
I was relieved because the family needed closure.
Susan Gorick brought justice to Peggy's family. She risked everything to put this criminal mind behind bars.
She put her life at risk just to, bring somebody's killer to justice. I think she's awesome.
The rest of the family who were poisoned all recovered successfully. As for Dwayne, losing his mother at the young age of 16 has been very hard.
Mother's Day comes around and you think, okay, this year I'm not going to be upset. You can't get around it. That's all you think about all day long. What's going to happen when my son asks me, where's my grandma? Where's Mimi at,
In the years that followed her death, Dwayne expressed his grief through anger and outbursts. But after getting in trouble, he decided to write to his mother. His letter reads, "Dear Mom, this is your baby boy. I'd like to tell you that I love you, and I'm sorry for all the bad things I've ever done to you. Hopefully, you're in a better place now. I often think about you and wish you were here. I haven't been so good, and I'm sorry. I'll try to get my life straight." Dwayne made good on his promise. Today, he's married and has become the father figure his own family deserved. He makes sure every day that his mom is proud of him and that her memory lives on. Dwayne Dubberly is living proof that even after tragedy, there is a life worth living.
I took a couple of pictures and just want to verify with you.
Yeah.
Is that her?
Yeah.
Okay.
This man is in jail for trying to murder his wife. And right now, he's hiring a hitman to finish what he started. What he doesn't know is that the hitman is actually an undercover cop.
So what was telling me was, make it happen.
Yeah.
Well, let me throw a number out to you just so I make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm thinking about 5K.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah.
Is there a time period? Is there a...
No.
No? And you're saying, all the way, right? Not...
Yeah, just, have fun.
Tiffany Mead, 22-year-old mother of 2, came face to face with death when her husband cut her throat in front of their child. But she survived. Unfortunately, her nightmare was just beginning as Chris Ertman would stop at nothing to see her dead.
If I'm not safe while Chris is in jail, I'm never gonna be safe again.
It's July 23rd, 2013. At around 11:30 p.m., the 911 operator from the Davis County Sheriff's Office receives this cryptic phone call.
911, what is the address of your emergency?
I'm in front of Davis High School.
Okay, what's going on there?
I tried to commit suicide. My neck's bleeding. I need help quick.
Is anybody with you, Tiffany?
My husband and my son.
Okay, can I talk to him?
Right away, the operator can tell something's off. Why would her husband let her call 911 herself?
Do you have a dry clean cloth that you can apply pressure to her neck?
I got my shirt.
Well, we need something. Are you applying pressure?
Yes, she has her hand on her throat.
The husband doesn't seem very worried. The operator begins to wonder if this is really a suicide attempt.
Do you know why she did this?
I don't know.
You let me know when an officer shows up.
Minutes later, police arrive on the scene. The officers grab the med kit and walk up to the car, but nothing prepares them for what they're about to discover. Tiffany is frantic, shaking, losing more and more blood from her wound. Her condition is critical.
It was unbelievable. There's no way that somebody's going to be able to survive this.
And while one of the officers takes care of Tiffany until the EMTs arrive, the other officer analyzes the scene.
All right, walk over this way with me. There was blood on the outside of the door. And I'm thinking, how did that blood get there? I knew that it was called in as an attempted suicide. I'm thinking, what am I looking at here?
The baby was crying, and one of the firemen was going to get the baby out of the back of the car. And she thought that we were going to hand the baby to her soon-to-be ex-husband. She just blurted out to me, "Don't let him take my baby. He's the one who did this. I didn't do this."
While they rush her to the hospital, her husband Chris is taken into custody and brought in for questioning.
Chris, why are you here tonight? Well, she tried to commit suicide, and I helped her out, I didn't exactly help her out, but I tried to save her. I assisted in saving her. Okay. I don't know how it happened, and just all of a sudden she cut her throat. She has a history of being suicidal.
People don't commit suicide that way, especially for a mother to do it in front of her child. Didn't make sense to me.
I mean, I love her. I mean, I wouldn't hurt her. If I wanted to hurt her, I wouldn't try to save her life, to be honest. Because I love her, I mean.
Already, the officer can tell his answers don't add up. But even if Chris is lying, the only way they will really know what happened is if Tiffany can talk. For now, she's still on the operating table, while doctors do everything they can to save her life. It's July 24th, the following morning. Lieutenant Jen Daly is put on Tiffany's case, just as they hear that Tiffany made it through surgery and is now ready to talk.
When I worked in Tiffany's room at the hospital, I saw this frail young woman. She undid her bandage and showed me the wound. It was shocking to me that she survived it. So what I would like to do is start from the time you two start calling or texting about this meeting last night.
Okay.
Clear to the point that you were placed in the ambulance.
Okay.
While Tiffany describes the events, Lieutenant Daly discovers that what she suspected is true.
He told me that if I wanted to get my child support check, that I would have to meet him.
He told me not to bring anyone. He kept reminding me to come along.
Tiffany replies that she will have to bring 2-year-old Noah with her. At the last minute, Chris picks this out-of-the-way park to meet.
I got out of the car and I walked around the back of my car. He just started walking towards me. He had this look. He was so determined coming at me. I didn't know what he was gonna do. I was terrified.
She's backing away, but Chris keeps walking, following her around the car. Suddenly, he grabs her in a bear hug, rendering Tiffany helpless.
I reminded him that Noah was there and he could hear and see everything that was going on. And he had his hand over my mouth. And with his right hand, he reached in his right pocket and he pulled out a knife. And he looked me in the eyes. And he slit my throat. And as he's slitting my throat, he says, "Shh, don't scream."
Tiffany tries to lift her hand up to her neck, but Chris holds her hand down. Minutes pass as Chris is looking at Tiffany losing blood. She warns him that she's getting dizzy. Chris opens the car door and sits her down.
I had to stay calm because I had to get my baby to safety. He said the only way he would let me get help is if we got back together and I dropped the divorce. And so I told him that I would get back together with him and that I loved him. And then he sealed it with a kiss and kissed me.
The next thing Chris tells her is they have to ditch the knife. He gets in the passenger seat, shuts the door, and Tiffany starts to drive with one hand on her neck. All she can think about is getting her baby to safety. After a few minutes, Tiffany stops the car in front of a school.
I was gonna call 911, and he said that we had to come up with a story. So he told me to tell them that I was trying to commit suicide because he knows I'm on antidepressants, and he thought it would be believable.
Okay, what's going on there?
I tried to commit suicide. My neck's bleeding. I need help quick.
When the officers get there, Tiffany waits for the right moment. She's praying for an opportunity to tell them the truth, but Chris is 2 feet away, and her baby boy Noah is within his reach. Then, just as an officer goes to pick up Noah, she breaks down, yelling not to give her baby to her husband. She tells them he did this. He tried to kill her. Without hesitation, the officers put Chris into custody.
She has a suicidal past. Last time I heard she was on antidepressants or something like that. I wouldn't kill her. I love her. I was trying to save our marriage. Watch your knee.
It's July 24th. Lieutenant Daly is finishing her interrogation at the hospital. The officer can tell that Tiffany is in bad shape, but she's coherent and thorough, unlike Chris, who can't seem to remember much and tries to avoid the conversation. It becomes clear that they are dealing with a dangerous individual.
Is there anything else that you think I need to know?
Just that he's a very violent person. And if he's done this once, he'll do it again.
She's a liar. At this point, I'm placing you under arrest for attempted homicide. To be honest, I don't care. I'm not giving my rights to that.
Chris, you're under arrest. Hand one way, okay?
Before Chris goes to trial, Lieutenant Daly has to prove that Chris did it. Without that proof, Chris will be released within a year, with nothing to stop him from trying to kill Tiffany again. The only possible evidence lies in the knife he ditched himself, as it would have his prints.
We ended up searching close to a mile area, but ultimately we couldn't find the knife. Tiffany's life was in danger. I had to do something.
While Tiffany is recovering at home, she lives in fear that Chris might be getting out soon, but she's not alone. Lieutenant Jen Daly takes the initiative to listen to jail phone calls of Chris, hoping in one of them, he'll confess.
This call is subject to recording and monitoring.
What else you know? Anything good? Nothing new, nothing good.
Now you better talk to Dad about that because he worries.
I know what to say and not to say.
His dad was very good at reminding him, don't talk about that night, remember that all calls are recorded.
Me and Mom don't trust nobody. I know.
But after 6 months of listening to hours of conversations between Chris and his parents, Daly hasn't heard any useful information. She's beginning to lose hope. As the day of the trial approaches, time is running out.
I never heard anything that I was looking for. I was failing Tiffany.
My children gave me the strength that I needed. There's nothing more important in my life than those 2 little boys. And I was afraid, after what Chris had just done to me, what he would be willing to do to my kids.
My gut kept telling me, you've got to keep listening. It's there, it's there.
Hello? Chris, what's going on? Write down this name, Raymond. Raymond? Yeah, and just Facebook him and tell him that I'm in here.
Wow, it's been almost 6 months, and this is the first time I ever heard you say anything about a friend, so to speak. And so I wrote the name on a little sticky pad, and I walked down the hall to Sergeant Thompson's office, and I said, find him for me.
Raymond, whose last name remains anonymous, has served time in the county jail, but is no longer behind bars. After looking into his file, Lieutenant Daly discovers that Raymond has spent some time in the same block as Chris Ertman. Daly knows this is a big break.
We contacted Raymond's probation officer and made arrangements to go meet.
We want to ask you some questions about when you were in our jail. Did you get to know a guy named Christopher Ertman?
Oh, yeah.
Did he ever talk about the situation he was in with his ex-wife and and all that stuff?
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
What happened in jail stayed in jail, man.
There's a time to do what's right. This is one of those moments in your life.
There wasn't a lot of details. Like, I guess he admitted guilt. Like that he's the one that cut her throat, or tried to cut her throat.
This is the confession Daly and Sergeant Thompson have been waiting for, but there's more. Out of intuition, Sergeant Bob Thompson asks the following question.
Did he ever ask you to do anything to Tiffany?
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
He just asked me if I had the connections to arrange for bad things to happen to her.
What are bad things?
To arrange her death, specifically.
He's trying to hire a hitman. This is bad. This is terribly bad.
He wanted to have me killed. He wanted to have someone else do what he couldn't.
Whenever the question was asked, I tactfully avoided it. And I guess in a way kind of like left the question unanswered. There's a coldness in his eyes, man, that... So you never know, man. Sometimes it's the quiet people.
For her safety's sake, Lieutenant Daly goes to visit Tiffany and tells her everything. That Chris Ertman is inside a jail, orchestrating her murder.
I remember everyone was asleep, just sitting on the floor, crying, and thinking,
If I'm not safe while Chris is in jail, I'm never gonna be safe again.
Tiffany worries that at any moment, a hitman hired by Chris will come up to her in the streets, or even at her house. It seems that Chris will stop at nothing until she's dead.
We had her house put on extra patrol. I remember telling her, if you're scared and it's 2 o'clock in the morning, I'll come up to your house myself. You don't have to hold this burden alone.
Lieutenant Daly and Bob Thompson decide to counterattack and ask Raymond to meet with Chris, hoping to get Chris on tape, ordering the hit on his ex-wife.
What's up, bro? Oh, I don't know. What are you doing, man?
As always. So, working on my case.
He stood nothing to gain whatsoever. Deserves a lot of respect that he would make that decision when he certainly didn't have to.
You remember that work that you needed done, though?
Yeah.
Dude, I've got that guy, bro.
I can't do that this time, no.
Should I try to, like, negotiate a little bit and see what I can do, or what?
Wait on that.
Chris refusing to take the bait shocks the officers. There's a chance he knows he's being played. If that's the case, Tiffany is in grave danger. The date of the trial, June 2014, is closing in. They must find proof before then.
Tiffany's life was in danger. There were days I could actually feel panic for her. We were done at that point, or so we thought.
Then, another inmate comes forward from within the jail. He claims he's been approached by Chris. Though they don't necessarily trust this informer, he does know things only Chris could have told him.
Did he give you any clues to why he cut her throat?
She left him. Rejection. I told you he offered to have me do something. Kill her. I'm giving him every opportunity to, back out, and he's not.
So besides...
He's more aggressive with it, wanting to have done more.
This inmate is a career criminal, and he has deep connections. If anybody could hire somebody, it was him.
This is their last chance to nail Chris before it's too late, but the risk is extremely high, as the inmate is far from reliable. Sadly, they don't have any other option. They arrange to send an undercover cop to pose as the hitman and meet with the inmate and Chris.
Yeah, just pass the bull for a minute. He'll come by and watch in a second. Okay.
The man in the jumpsuit is the informer, and the undercover cop is waiting for him to invite Chris over.
Yeah, just let me know. You'll see. Yeah, you'll see.
Where's Earthman? Tell Earthman to come here for a second.
I don't know. Okay, I think he's coming up behind him.
Notice how Chris doesn't sit down to talk. He only passes on a paper. It's the address where Tiffany lives.
Tiffany's actual home address, and that was chilling. He's on board with this.
Okay, see that? Yeah, okay. That's just where he thinks he's at. That's the parent's address right there. Like, I'll go check it out. I'll come back and I'll talk to him then.
Chris is being told that the hitman will go on site to take pictures to make sure he has the right target. For now, the undercover cop is denied access to Chris directly. He will have to play along and come back at another time. Then, the sheriff's office gets the most disturbing news. The informer refuses to cooperate any further unless he gets a reduced sentence.
Frankly, we're not going to let him go. He had a case that involved a victim. That victim needed justice too, and we simply weren't going to cave into his demands.
They know the inmate will go tell the whole thing to Chris and ruin the operation. They have to act quickly. Right away, they request an immediate removal of the inmate from the jail, not knowing if it's already too late. Lieutenant Jen Daly insists that they continue on with the plan and send in the undercover cop to meet with Chris directly.
This was our final play. Today was the day it was going to work or it was going to fail.
What's up, man?
Not much. How about you?
Good, how are you?
Just chilling.
I took a couple of pictures and just want to verify with you.
I had just this anxious energy all over me, and I paced around my desk. Just this worry, just this incredible worry for really a stranger. I didn't know her until this case, but she was going to die.
Yeah. You see that?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
Is that her?
Yeah.
Okay. So what he was telling me was, make it happen.
Yeah. Yeah, just, have fun.
And you're saying, all the way, right? Not...
Yeah, have fun.
Okay. So, and when do you want me to have this done by?
Just whenever you can.
Is there a time period? Is there a...
No.
No?
Sooner the better.
Sooner the better?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, let me throw a number out to you just so I make sure we're on the same page.
Yeah.
'Cause I'm thinking about $5,000.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yeah.
So, but just so we're clear, I'm talking about, we're not, there's no way to come back from it once I do it. You're good with that?
Yeah.
I just remember at that moment while we were watching, inside my being, the stress went away that fast. I literally jumped out of my chair, and I remember just like, yes, we got him!
Lieutenant Daly makes the call to Tiffany, the one she's been waiting for months.
You don't have to be scared anymore. You don't have to worry anymore. He's going to be in there a hell of a lot longer than he was ever going to be off that original charge.
Along with the attempted murder charge, the prosecutor now added a solicitation to commit aggravated murder charge.
I was so relieved. It was probably the safest I had been since all of it started. I told her, "Thank you for saving my life."
Because of the overwhelming proof against him, Chris pled no contest to the charges.
Mr. Ertman, sir, is there anything that you would like to tell the court today?
Whatever happened, and I'll take blame for it. Yeah, I did it. I was not in my right mind. I'm not dangerous.
As Chris has confessed, there is no need for Tiffany to testify. She is, however, granted permission to issue a statement to the court.
Your Honor, I did not know where to begin in telling you how this crime has impacted me. Some people are afraid of the boogeyman. He is just a figment of their imagination. My boogeyman lives and breathes. I was starting to take my power back from him and show him that I can move on from the horrendous thing that he did to me. He will try again to finish what he has attempted 3 times already. It is this concern that causes me to plead again to impose the maximum sentence possible.
Chris Ertman receives a sentence of 5 years to life, meaning he is eligible for parole after 5 years. But during that time, Tiffany is getting ready. Every day she's getting stronger and refuses to live as a victim. And with the help of Lieutenant Daly, she's preparing for the parole hearing.
I have to do everything in my power to keep this monster locked away.
A Davis County man in prison for slashing his now ex-wife's throat and hiring a hitman to try and kill her had a parole hearing today.
Tiffany Meade testified, making it clear what she believes his intentions would be if he were ever to get out of prison. Davis County Sheriff's Captain Jen Daly was there to support Meade.
I couldn't have done any better for you, sweetheart.
And after all she went through, Tiffany continues to win over the monster that tried to take her life.
Chris was denied parole at his hearing.
For Jen to show up to these parole hearings and to write to the parole board to help me fight, that means the world to me.
As long as I am alive, I will continue to stand in a gap between Christopher Ertman and Tiffany Meade.
Today, Tiffany is well on her way to recovery. She is remarried, and her 2 little boys are happy and safe. She is hard at work, becoming a powerful voice against domestic violence. She is forever grateful for all the people who helped her with her own battle, and most especially for Lieutenant Jen Daly.
I do think that Jen Daly is my guardian angel. That woman has moved mountains.
This job takes its toll on us. But it's this situation that makes it all worthwhile.